Welcome to the How to Speak Fluent English podcast. Today, we're diving headfirst into something I know hits home for a lot of you learning English. It's that feeling, right? You can understand so much. You follow movies, you get articles, you can even, pick up on what people are saying in conversations, but then when it's your turn to speak, the words just disappear or they come out all hesitant. And frankly, it feels kind of painful. It's this really frustrating gap, isn't it, between understanding and actually speaking confidently. And it can make you feel pretty isolated, like, what am I doing wrong? Everyone else seems to get it. But here's the absolute truth, and I really want you to hear this. It's not a personal failing, not at all. And you are definitely not alone in this. This is actually a really common stage, almost a natural part of the whole language learning journey. So our mission today is to really unpack the why behind this. Why does this happen? And maybe more importantly, give you some real practical strategies you can use to start bridging that gap confidently. Because what you're describing, it isn't just, a common issue. It's practically a rite of passage for so many language learners. And thinking of it less like a problem, like a big wall you've hit, and more like a crossroads on your journey. That's key. You've basically studied the map of English really well. You understand the layout, you can read the signs. Now it's about shifting gears, moving from being a really sharp observer to becoming an active participant, actually navigating that territory yourself. And while it definitely feels like a big hurdle right now, I promise you it's genuinely a stepping stone. It actually shows you've already built this amazing foundation of knowledge that's a solid base you can launch from. By just tweaking your perspective a bit and applying some, specific techniques we'll talk about, you'll find that making real, noticeable progress in speaking, it's not just possible, it's right there within reach. Honestly, you're probably much closer to fluency than you think right now. Okay, so let's really get into this paradox then. Why? Why can we absorb so much information, understand complex stuff, even get jokes in English, but then freeze up when we try to produce it ourselves? Where's the disconnect? It largely comes down to a pretty fundamental difference in how our brains handle input versus how it pushes it out. How we take information in versus how we push it out. Think about how most of us start learning, especially in, say, school settings. It's heavily weighted towards what we call passive learning, the input phase. You're spending hours with textbooks, right? Memorizing grammar rules, learning vocabulary lists, seeing how sentences are pulled together. You're watching movies, maybe with subtitles, listening to podcasts like this one, reading news, reading books, and all of that. It's incredibly valuable, don't get me wrong. It builds this huge reservoir of language data inside your head. You become a really skilled receiver, like building a massive internal library. So it's like you've filled your mental bookshelves with thousands of English books, but you haven't really practiced writing one yet, or even just, reading a chapter out loud confidently. And that's the critical difference from active learning. Active learning is the output. It's when you produce the language yourself, speaking it, writing it. Now, passive learning is essential. It builds that foundation, but it's just not enough on its own to get you speaking fluently, especially spontaneously. Think about learning to cook. You could watch every cooking show ever made, read every single cookbook, memorize recipes, understand all the techniques. You'd know so much about cooking. But until you actually get in the kitchen, pick up a knife, feel the heat, start chopping, mixing, tasting, adjusting on the fly, you haven't trained the actual skills, the muscle memory, the quick decisions, the sensory feedback needed to actually cook. Passive learning gives you the theory. Active learning trains the muscles you need to perform. But here's the amazing advantage for people in this situation. You already understand so much. You're not starting from absolute zero with a language that looks and sounds completely alien. You've already done a huge amount of the decoding work. That understanding isn't a roadblock, it's your biggest asset. It's a massive head start. That passive versus active distinction is really key, isn't it? But then there's that other hurdle, the one I hear about all the time, the thinking too much trap. That's where the real struggle seemed to happen for a lot of people. The mind just freezes. It's incredibly common and debilitating. The second you go to say something in English, your brain kicks into overdrive. It tries to be perfect. It becomes this frantic internal editor. It's trying to translate from your native language, pull up the right grammar rule for this exact situation, search its mental dictionary for the absolute perfect word, and then assemble the whole sentence correctly, all while someone is waiting for you to speak. That's an immense cognitive load, just too much mental juggling at once. And in a real conversation, which moves fast, that internal calculation just takes forever. The other person is waiting, maybe looking expectant, and you're stuck inside your head, frantically searching. It's agonizing. See, unlike writing where you have time, you can pause, think, revise, look things up. Speaking is instant. It demands immediate recall, improvisation, a certain flow. This constant internal editing, trying to get everything just right before it even comes out, it leads to those hesitations, the awkward pauses, that awful feeling of being stuck or your mind just going totally blank. Imagine telling a friend about your day, but after every few words, you stop to mentally check verb, tenses, or word order. Focusing so hard on grammatical perfection during the conversation completely kills the natural flow. It forces you into constant self-correction, sometimes mid-word, and it just blocks any kind of spontaneous expression. Your brain's basically trained for careful analysis, which is great for reading or writing, but it clashes completely with the fast-paced, dynamic nature of speaking. We need to retrain it, essentially help it switch gears. And this leads us right to what I think is the absolute crucial first step. Before any techniques, it's about changing your perspective, reframing how you see this whole challenge. So instead of seeing it as, oh, I have this problem, I understand but can't speak, we need to flip that narrative entirely, see it differently. Like maybe it's not a problem at all, but just a normal, even expected phase of growth. Think about your language journey not as a series of pass-fail moments, but more like a spectrum, a continuum. Let's imagine a fluency scale, say 0 to 10. 0 is absolutely no speaking ability. 10 is effortless, native-like fluency. Now, if you understand English pretty well but struggle to speak, you are definitely not at 0, not even close. You're probably somewhere in the range of, say, a 3 to a 5. And recognizing that is huge. It means you've already made significant progress. You're not stuck at the starting line. You're well on your way. Maybe hitting a steeper part of the climb, but you are moving forward. You're positioned perfectly for the next stage. That's actually a really empowering way to look at it. It means we're not failing. We're just transitioning, moving from one level, like a 3, towards a 4, then maybe a 5. It takes the pressure off trying to make this impossible leap from just understanding to sounding like a native speaker overnight. Because real fluency, it's gradual, it's incremental. Sometimes you might even feel like you slide back a bit before moving forward again. It's not linear. It's just completely unrealistic and honestly kind of unfair to yourself to expect that jump from understanding to perfect speaking instantly. Think about how you learned your first language. Years of just absorbing, trying things out, making countless mistakes, all without any pressure about rules. Getting that level of fluency in a second language, it takes dedicated, consistent work, a whole lot of patience, and maybe most importantly, being okay with not being perfect. You're literally asking your brain to build new pathways to do something incredibly complex in a new way. That needs time, it needs practice, and it needs a lot of brave attempts, even the messy ones. Every time you try to speak, even if it's not perfect, you're strengthening those new connections. And this connects directly to something I think is maybe the biggest blocker for people, the emotional side, the fear. It's huge, right? That fear of making mistakes, of sounding awkward, of being judged or even laughed at. It can just shut you down. It's paralyzing for so many people, and it's a totally understandable human reaction. You know, when I've tried learning bits of other languages, like trying to order coffee in a language I barely know, that anxiety, that knot in your stomach about saying the wrong thing or sounding ridiculous, it's very real. But here's a truth that, if you can really internalize it, can be incredibly liberating. It's this: nobody cares about your mistakes nearly as much as you do. Seriously, most people you talk to are either supportive, curious, or honestly just focused on their own thing. They're not sitting there with a red pen waiting to critique your grammar. And even more fundamentally, this is the breakthrough idea. Mistakes are not failures. They are absolutely essential learning tools. Think of each mistake as crucial data for your brain. It's a little signal saying, okay, that pathway wasn't quite right. Let's adjust. It's not failure, it's feedback. It's how neuroplasticity works. Your brain needs that feedback to remap and get better. The only way, and I really mean the only way to get better at speaking is by actually speaking. And that inevitably means making mistakes along the way. You almost have to learn to embrace them, welcome them even, see them as proof that you're trying, proof that you're learning. Without mistakes, there's no real growth. So it's shifting from trying to avoid mistakes at all costs to almost seeking them out, seeing them as the fuel needed to improve. It's more like experimentation, the performance. And maybe frame this whole process just like you're building a new relationship, a relationship with the English language itself. Like any new relationship, the beginning can be awkward, right? A bit uncertain. You might feel vulnerable. It takes some courage, consistent effort, and just being willing to show up authentically, even if you're not perfectly smooth yet. You have to actively engage in this relationship, even when it feels uncomfortable or you stumble over your words. But the rewards, being able to connect with people from different backgrounds, express your own unique ideas, navigate new places, access a whole world of information, they're huge. This relationship might be tough at first, but it will absolutely enrich your life. You just need to find that little bit of inner linguistic bravery. Okay, so we understand the why. We've hopefully started to shift our mindset towards embracing this as a growth phase. Now let's get really practical. What are the actionable steps? What can people listening start doing like today to activate their speaking skills and start closing that gap? This is where we make that shift from being excellent information absorbers to becoming confident language producers. The first really concrete strategy I recommend is adopting targeted thematic learning for active recall. Instead of feeling totally overwhelmed by thinking, I need to learn all of English, which is completely understandable, focus your energy. Pick individual, manageable topics. This makes the whole thing feel less daunting, and importantly, it keeps it relevant to your life, your interests. Start with common things you actually talk about or want to talk about. Family, work, food, hobbies, maybe relationships, travel, things happening in the world. So breaking that giant language beast down into smaller, more digestible pieces. Instead of trying to eat the whole elephant at once, focus on one bite at a time. Makes sense. And the first method within that thematic approach is something I call the speaking notebook. This could be an actual physical notebook, a document on your computer, notes on your phone, whatever works for you and you'll actually use. The idea is to create different sections for each of your chosen topics. So you might have a page or section for my job, another for hobbies, one for food, one for travel, etc. Okay, and what goes in these sections? Just lists of words. Not just random words, it's more structured. When you learn new vocabulary, useful phrases, cool adjectives, action verbs, or common expressions that relate to that specific topic, you write them down under that topic. So for travel, you wouldn't just write airport. You'd add check-in desk, boarding pass, go through security, catch a flight, miss a connection. Maybe adjectives like scenic, bustling, relaxing. Phrases like book accommodation, try the local food, get lost in the city. Doing this actively prepares your brain. It primes the specific neural pathways related to that topic, creating mental shortcuts so you can recall those words and phrases more quickly when you're actually talking about travel. You're basically building a personalized, topic-specific toolkit that's ready to go, like having all the right tools laid out before you start a specific DIY project. Then, building right on that speaking notebook idea, the second method is what I call intentional sentence building. It's about moving step by step from simple sentences to more complex ones, building confidence as you go. This really trains your brain to put English sentences together more naturally, more fluently, without that horrible lag where you're translating in your head. Start with a really basic core sentence about your topic. Let's use pizza as an example. You could start with, I like pizza. Dead simple. Yeah, anyone can manage. I like pizza. But how do you build on that without getting tangled up in grammar rules or sounding awkward? That's the intentional part. You add layers gradually. So from I like pizza, you add a bit more detail. Maybe I like eating pizza. Then add when or where. I like eating pizza for lunch. Then add more specifics. I like eating 2 slices of mushroom pizza for lunch. You keep layering. I really like eating 2 slices of delicious hot mushroom pizza for lunch, especially on Fridays. And maybe add a reason or feeling. I really like eating 2 slices of delicious hot mushroom pizza for lunch, especially on Fridays, because it feels like a treat after a long week. So you're not just memorizing longer sentences, you're practicing the process of expanding a thought in English. It's like learning to connect Lego bricks. Start simple, then add more and more complex pieces naturally. It's this step-by-step iterative building process that trains your brain. It teaches your mind how to flow from one idea to the next, adding detail and nuance without getting stuck translating word by word or consciously checking every grammar point. It helps bypass that slow, clunky translation process and encourages you to start thinking in bigger chunks of English, developing a more intuitive feel for the rhythm and structure of the language. And to help you find those crucial building blocks, the words and phrases that really sound natural together, I strongly recommend using online English collocation dictionaries. Collocation dictionaries, okay, what exactly are those and how do they fit in here? They are incredibly useful tools. Seriously, an online collocation dictionary, and there are lots of good free ones, does more than just define a word. When you look up a word, say challenge, it will show you words that typically go with it in natural English. So instead of just the definition, you'll see things like face a challenge, overcome a challenge, a big challenge, a difficult challenge, pose a challenge. These are the natural pairings that native speakers use all the time, often without even thinking. So it's not just about knowing individual words, but knowing which words like to hang out together, like puzzle pieces that fit naturally. Take another word, maybe decision. You'll find collocations like make a decision, a tough decision, reach a decision, a snap decision. Looking up a word you want to use gives you this instant library of natural-sounding phrases. Then the really important step is to connect these phrases to your life, your experiences, the topics in your speaking notebook. Don't just memorize make a decision. Create a sentence that's true for you. I need to make a decision about my weekend plans soon. Or making that career decision was tough, but worth it. This personal connection makes them so much easier to remember and, crucially, to pull out and use spontaneously in a real conversation.
These become like prefabricated chunks of language, ready-made phrases your brain can grab as a single unit, which dramatically speeds up your speaking and makes you sound more fluent because you're not building every single sentence from scratch every time. You're using these ready-made linguistic bricks. So we're building vocabulary thematically, practicing sentence construction step by step, and using tools like collocation dictionaries to sound natural. Yeah. Now, for the really crucial part, actually getting these words out. How do we practice the act of speaking consistently? My absolute favorite technique here, and seriously, don't knock it till you try it. It might feel weird at first, but it's so effective, especially if you don't have someone to practice with easily. Method 1, speaking to yourself. Yeah, your inner dialogue, but out loud. Yes, I completely endorse this. It might feel a bit self-conscious initially, but it's such a power way to practice without any pressure or fear of judgment. The basic idea is simple. Have actual conversations with yourself out loud. Pick one of your topics from your notebook, ask yourself questions about it, and then answer them verbally as if you were talking to someone else. So if my topic is my dream vacation, I'd literally ask myself out loud, okay, where would my dream vacation be? And then answer, my dream vacation would probably be somewhere like Japan. Then follow up, why Japan? Well, because I'm fascinated by the culture, the food, the mix of ancient and modern. And if you run out of questions to ask yourself, use technology. Type into an AI tool, give me 15 questions about dream vacations. Boom, instant practice prompts. The key here is to be playful, experiment. Don't censor yourself or worry about perfection. Try combining phrases you've collected. Try out different sentence structures you've been practicing. And really importantly, don't just do this sitting at your desk. Do it while you're walking, doing chores, waiting for the bus, maybe even quietly on your commute if you can. Make speaking English a background process in your daily life. Turn those everyday moments into micro practice sessions. But what happens if I'm talking to myself and I make a mistake? Like I use the wrong tense or mispronounce something. Should I stop and correct myself constantly? Good question. For this solo practice, no, not necessarily. The main goal here is getting the words flowing, building the habit and muscle memory of speaking. Quantity over perfect quality. Initially, just the act of forming the words, getting them out, even if they're not perfect, is training your brain's production circuits. Over time, as you keep learning passively too, reading, listening, your brain will naturally start to self-correct. You'll hear yourself say something slightly off, and because you know the correct way subconsciously from your input, your brain will notice. It's a gradual refinement process. So be patient with yourself, be kind. The most important thing in this stage is just speak. Get the engine running. Just speak. That leads perfectly into method 2, which is about taking that practice into the real world, creating real-world speaking opportunities. Because talking to yourself is great, but eventually we need to interact with others. This is where you shift from practicing in a safe space to applying it. And it's about being proactive. Don't just wait for chances to speak English to magically appear. You have to actively create them. Step outside your comfort zone, even just a little bit. So maybe at work, instead of automatically using my native language with a colleague I know speaks English, I could try starting a small convo in English about a project or even just how their weekend was. Or when I buy coffee, actually say, "Can I please have a medium latte?" instead of just pointing. Start small. Start with people you feel relatively comfortable with. The topic doesn't have to be deep or complex. A quick chat about something simple is perfect. And here's a really crucial piece of advice. When someone does start a conversation with you in English, fight the urge to go into escape mode, where you kind of shrink back, avoid eye contact, give one-word answers, hoping they'll switch languages or just go away. Don't do that. Make a conscious choice to show up, engage, respond with the English you have right now. Remember, it's not about being fluent instantly. It's about managing with what you've got and showing you're willing to try. Every single time you do this, even if it feels awkward, it's a win. And you'll often find it wasn't nearly as scary as you thought it would be. Showing up instead of escaping. Now, if initiating conversations or even talking to yourself still feels a bit too much pressure initially, method 3 is a fantastic option. Finding a practice partner or joining a group. There's definitely strength in numbers. Oh, and the benefits are huge. Learning with others gives you motivation, support, accountability, and you actually remember things better because you're actively using the language together, explaining things, maybe even laughing about mistakes. You can find partners everywhere these days. Online language exchange platforms, apps, local meetup groups, or even starting a small practice circle with friends or colleagues who share your goal. The key is to find people you feel comfortable with, where it's safe to experiment and make mistakes. When you engage in real conversations, even simple ones, you're not just practicing words, you're building resilience and learning to navigate the unpredictable flow of actual human interaction. So, to really pull this all together and leave you with a clear path forward, remember that overcoming the speaking gap is not about fixing a flaw.
but about activating the incredible foundation of understanding you already built. It's about shifting your mindset from self-critique to self-compassion. Change your belief that English is difficult. Instead, affirm that it is easy and you are capable. Embrace every attempt, every stumble, every mistake as vital feedback your brain needs to grow and create new pathways. Actively engage with the language every day by surrounding yourself in English, think in English, talk to yourself, label objects, use targeted thematic learning with a speaking notebook, and practice intentional sentence building, leveraging tools like collocation dictionaries to sound natural. And crucially, step out and practice with others, starting small and gradually expanding your comfort zone. Don't wait for perfection to speak. Speak to achieve perfection. Your journey to fluency is incremental, not instantaneous, and it requires consistency and patience. You are much closer than you think. And with these practical strategies and a belief in your own ability, you absolutely can bridge that gap and become the confident, clear English speaker you aspire to be. Start today. Take that first small action. You have the tools, you have the knowledge, and now you have the strategy. Go out there and make English a living, breathing part of your life. I believe in you. You have been listening to the How to Speak Fluent podcast. Hope you found it helpful and, more importantly, enjoyable. Please like and share this video and subscribe to our channel to never miss out on future videos. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time on the journey to fluent communication.